Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Deraney, and I'm your host.
Michael, so good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, Drew. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and you're welcome. So I always like to thank the person who introduces me to my guest, and I have a spreadsheet that gives the person's name, and then I have a column that says the source, how I met them. So as we speak, I'm looking up your last name, and I'm gonna, unless you remember who introduced us, because I don't remember off the top of my head, and what I wrote in I have that Ethan Chazen invited us.
That makes sense.
So Ethan introduced us. So Ethan Chazen, thank you so much for the introduction, my friend. I appreciate it. There's a reason why you thought Michael and I should meet, and you're right. So thank you. So Michael, why are you here? You're here for a variety of reasons. Number one, you need to be a good human being to be on my show. Number two, you need to be one of three men most of your time. And I've often talked about there's three types of men. And because of our upbringing, when we're told life is linear, if you do A plus B plus C, our family means well, but ultimately stuff's going to happen in life that's going to derail our linear life, and we have a circuitous route. Well, man number one, man number two, and man number three exist. And man number one is that man who has a ton of blind spots, has no idea what's going on in front of him, and just lives life the way he was told to live, right? Nothing changes. Then there's man number two, and we've been there too. And we maybe even be there today at some point, who we see the adversity, we see it as a barrier, we claim ourselves the victim, we blame other people, we don't change a darn thing, and our life doesn't change, all right? The man I bring on this show is man number three, who you are. He's the man who's still facing adversity, yet has shifted his mindset to a growth mindset and is saying, this is life doing it for me, not to me. I'm not a victim. I can dictate and change the course of my life. I'm becoming a better man because of this adversity, and I'm going to change. You've done that. You're doing that. It's fluid. Reach back as far as you need to grab that defining moment, whether it's the tap on the shoulder, the whisper in the ear, or like I needed 5-6 years ago, the 2x4 upside my head to say, hey, Michael, there's a better way to live. I'm going to change. I'm doing something different. Here we go. What's that defining moment for you?
So I've had many of them, and I've had many shifts and transitions over time. It's an ever evolving process. I call it growing forward, and it naturally happens because if you're stagnant, you're going backwards because the world keeps moving without you.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're long dead for years and years, the world keeps going, whether we're here or not. So it's going to keep going if you're stagnant. So sitting still is going backwards. So I call life an opportunity and a beautiful experience of growing forward, perpetual state of evolution and growth and learning.
Right.
I guess, even this, there's been I'll give you the last two unbelievably remarkable circumstances.
Okay.
In 2020, early 2020, February 2020, right before COVID, I was estranged from my children for almost 20 months at that point. Wow. I got proof and evidence of abuse against my three children. I packed my car with $3.46 or 76 cents, I don't remember which one, and drove to Arkansas to fight for my kids. I had pictures and videos and sworn affidavits and all sorts of stuff. I get there, I'm stranded within an hour of my kids, knowing they're getting abused for every single day. And the lawyer that was my father and I hired, because my father helped me through this before he passed, and the lawyer that we hired said it would take a couple days and that I'd be immediately approved. It was 11 days of me being within an hour of my kids.
Oh my God! Now
keep in mind, I went there with no money.
Right.
So my dad was giving me a stipend of $20 a day, a pack of cigarettes, and then $10 on food for a whole day. I was crying. I was miserable. I hated myself. I created a multi-layered way of killing myself to make sure that it worked this time.
Yeah.
A stranger on LinkedIn reached out to me, who's now a stranger again, but it was just synchronicity of timing. and said to me, everything's going to be okay. And that was March 5th. March 6th, I get the call from the lawyer. Paperwork's been submitted. You've already been signed off. Go to the town. Bring the paperwork because we know that there's nepotism in the town. Protect yourself and get your kids. So March 6th of 2020 was the beginning of a journey.
Wow.
I got my kids with proof of the abuse against them, everything in hand. I packed for 8 days. Keep in mind, I was already stranded there for 11.
11, yeah.
And I only had $3.46 to my name. And I got my kids March 6th of 2020. We immediately went to a motel, which I begged, borrowed, and whatever else to get a hotel for a week or two.
Sure.
And then there was a tornado in the neighboring town where my lawyer's office was. So the first hearing got canceled, and then COVID hit.
Oh, geez.
I was stranded out there for 19 months.
So much for those 2 days and 11 days. My gosh.
So that process, I went out there to save them, and I accidentally saved myself. I had no interest in saving myself.
Interesting.
But I would have never have made it through without saving them. I would have never made it through saving them if I didn't save myself.
Exactly. Yep.
So I was forced to sit in it, to face myself, and to heal.
Yeah.
Go through childhood trauma that I avoided, go through all this other stuff that I've avoided, and really start peeling back the layers. Now, during this 19 months, I worked with 40 to 50 coaches. I worked with 7 shamans, 2 priests, and a rabbi. I mean, I was accumulating information everywhere. I found audiobooks. I went through 60 to 80 audiobooks in that 19 months.
Right.
I went so overboard in healing, so deep into it, that I call spirituality the journey of self-understanding.
Okay. Yeah.
My self-understanding went to such a level of awareness.
Wow.
But even awareness has phases, because awareness in the beginning is dirty.
Yeah.
Because you start seeing who you really are.
Absolutely.
And if you don't find ways to heal through that pain, then you turn around and stop looking. So I think that's where most people get stuck in their healing journey. They get stuck in that in love with themselves phase where love is blind.
Right.
And you ignore your flaws, you ignore your weaknesses, and you focus on the strengths. You know everything. You know how to fix everyone. You know how to fix yourself. You know everything else. I deconstructed myself to such a level that I had no fucking clue anything, which is why I kept absorbing information. During this process, for the first 40 years of my life, I hated myself. I despised myself. Right. I showered in the dark because I couldn't look in my own eyes. That's how much I hated myself.
Jeez.
August of 2020, for the first time in my life, I said, I love me. August of 2021, for the first time in my life, I said I was in love with me, which I was ignoring my flaws, ignoring all the weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I went into ego, living in my high horse. I know what's better for everyone. I know what's best for this person. And I lived in that arrogant, ignorant space. November of 16th of 2022, I had a major stroke, triple stroke while I was driving, 86% chance I'd be a vegetable for the rest of my life. And I healed myself. I'm healthier than I've ever been in my life. My blood work is healthier. My sleep apnea is gone. All these things that were horrendous are now gone.
You healed yourself.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to get into that later.
That's fun. And now I unconditionally love myself. So what I found with that transition from in love with myself to unconditional is I am perfect exactly the way I am.
Okay.
I don't have any conditions to how I love myself.
So the in love with yourself, the in love with yourself is not necessarily a positive thing. Is that what you're saying with that?
It is when you come from hating yourself.
It is okay. So but the part where you had the ego that you could, what everybody needs and all that kind of stuff, you had to go through that phase.
But everybody does.
Everybody does do that.
Many people just get stuck there.
Yep.
They come from these horrific, tragic experiences. They move into a space where for the first time ever, they're in love with themselves. They don't see their flaws, and then they know how to fix everyone. Got it.
It's a period you need to go through to get to that
period. But people get stuck every step of the way.
Yes.
We all get stuck. We get stuck sometimes.
Right. Good point.
I just am lucky enough that the universe kicks me in the ass every time I get stuck.
Every time you get stuck, you get kicked forward, which is like that. Yeah.
Right. I grow forward every single time.
Grow forward. So now
I'm compassionately self-aware, and I unconditionally love myself.
I love that. That's
because I come from a place of, I don't need to lose weight to love myself more. I don't need to make more money to love myself more. I don't need to have a better house to love myself more. I don't need a better car. I don't need new clothes. I don't need to wear dress shirts. I don't need anything to love myself more.
You just
need I grow forward every day.
You just need to be 100%. You need to be.
That's it.
Yep.
Just be authentically me, no matter what.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just I had a call with somebody earlier, and we talked about the phases of manifestation, and it's really about be, do, have. Too many people believe they have to have something in order to do something, in order to be who they are. But if we just be who we are to start, everything takes.
So the real secret to manifesting, which is bogus, which most of what they teach you is bogus.
It's bogus, right?
First of all, the law of attraction doesn't exist.
Right.
It's a subset law. What you really need to do is stand in the universal law of vibration. When you're in your soul's vibration and you're living in your soul's purpose, everything to accomplish your soul's purpose and tasks aligns to you. It is naturally attracted to you. You don't have to fight for it. You just have to be. And this is what the world disconnects us from, ourselves.
Yeah, this is true.
So everything's a disconnection and a distraction, or a tool and an amplifier. It's all how we look at it. Technology is the greatest amplifier of all time, but people look at it as a weapon because that's the misery that they carry inside.
Right. So now we talk about you healing yourself. It does have something to do with what you're talking about with the vibration, right? So let's I want to transition this and teach the audience a little bit about what you're going to tell us about frequency and vibration.
So when I was in Arkansas for that 19 months and I was working with the shamans, I was ordained by two of them as a shaman. Right. I refused to use a label because I like delivery food and I like cigarettes and I like air conditioning. So I didn't see I don't like using labels. Labels to me are limiting. I find labels extremely limiting. They are. We put ourselves in boxes. We trap ourselves in every way, shape, or form.
Yep.
So when somebody says, "Who are you?" I just say, "I'm me."
Me.
That's it. I'm the only one that in all of time and existence in the world couldn't handle two of me. I promise.
Just one.
So I'm me.
One's enough.
100%, without a doubt. You ask my kids; they're verified.
Yeah.
So when I healed myself, I mean, first of all, the next morning I went to the hospital after the stroke. It was 26 hours later. They didn't even believe me when I told them I had a stroke.
Okay.
They didn't want to admit me, but they did the scan anyway because I insisted and I was slurring my words and I was half paralyzed. But they still didn't want to admit me. They didn't want to do anything. But I forced them. I told them I wasn't leaving until you do something. So they took the test and they're like, "Yeah, you had a triple major stroke in these three places in your brain all at once." The doctor looked at me. Well, they admitted me before even telling me the results.
Okay.
So they went from not wanting to admit me, not believing me, to admitting me before telling me anything.
Because they saw the results, so then they figured.
So again, tangible proof, right? They need tangible proof for
everything. Yeah. No faith there, yeah.
So it gets me upstairs. The doctor comes to me and he says, "You had a triple stroke, 3 different places in your brain, major stroke, 86% chance you'll be a vegetable for the rest of your life. How are you okay? And you came 26 hours later." I said, "Well, I started healing myself." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm a trained shaman, and I went into my spiritual practices, energy work, and healing practices." And he just kind of looked at me like I had 10 heads, and that was fine. I'm used to that look, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
right? Like that's not a big deal. So for me, it was going into a meditative healing stasis, is what I call it.
Okay.
So I go deep into a meditative trance, and I put on pure frequencies.
Okay.
No guided anything, just frequencies. And I listen to what aligns with what my intuition is telling me at the time. Like now it's to the point that my intuition will just tell me what number to put in and what number to find. And that's the frequency number I listen to. At that time, it wasn't as in tune. So it was mostly 432 and 541 are really the ones that I listened to heal during that period of time. But I mean, I was literally half paralyzed. I mean, I had less than 15% mobility on the left side of my body for the first 6 weeks. And I was still dragging my body up and downstairs, taking care of my kids, getting them in and out of the house. Because I'm a solo parent of 3 kids.
Right.
So it's just me. So I would spend the 3 hours getting them ready in the morning with their 3 different schedules. And then I would go to sleep for 6 hours until they came home. And that's what my whole day was. I didn't work for 11 months.
I understand this because I've been doing a lot of work and speaking with you, and I get it. How can we collectively, you and I, and the men and the women who are in this space of personal development, make this the norm, get this to be the norm rather than the exception? The belief in vibration and frequency and aligning yourself with your soul. And a lot of the powers that be want this to be remembered as foo-foo and not real, and don't listen to them. How do we change this?
So the easiest way, which goes completely oppositional to everything that me and you are trying to build, is stop listening to anything outside of yourself. Shut off all the noise and start listening to your inner voice.
Yeah.
Because nothing else matters.
No, it doesn't.
Nothing knows you better than you. There's a reason that some medicines work for some and some don't work for others. There's a reason that sometimes no chemo works better than chemo, where chemo works better for one than the other. It's all what you believe and how you manifest that belief. And how you bring that to fruition.
Right.
Because there's many people with stage 1 cancer that just don't believe they're going to make it, and they don't. There's people with stage 4 that believe they're going to make it, and they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's so much, it's not even mind over matter. It's listening to your intuition and trusting self, your inner self. I don't want to call higher self. I don't want to call it deeper self. I don't like higher self, because if you say you're talking to your higher self, that immediately means you're your lower self. So you're putting yourself down by saying I'm talking to my higher self. The goal is to embrace and embody all facets of self rather than disconnect. But so much of the spiritual teachings that now are passed around today by quote unquote gurus is about detaching even more, just in different ways. And I can't buy into that. My goal is to inspire others to be self-inspired, empower others to be self-empowered. I want to give gifts that nobody can take away from anyone. But that's not how the world works.
No,
because
it doesn't.
We're living in this conditional love, conditional space.
Right.
But when you move into a space of unconditional self-love, you have no interest in participating in that anymore.
No, I absolutely get that. I mean, I stopped watching any kind of news channels back in 2020. So I haven't. So, I'm on that same journey of only listening to myself and not the outside stuff. But when people are conditioned otherwise, how are we getting them to hear our words or our message or our story? I guess a podcast can help.
I mean, a podcast helps. However they get information. I mean, you've got to reach them where they're at too, right? So
that's true.
It's, but here's the thing. I want to guide people. I don't like the word coach, because to me that's a power struggle word. Power dynamic. I like guide because you stand by someone's side and you go on their path with them. So to me, it's more of a personal journey that way. But that's just me, right? It's how I interpret things, because we all are what we are what we believe.
Right.
So that's what we have to be careful of.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me, it's about stepping into that space and just really trusting self and learning to understand who I really am.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know who I was for all those years. I mean, I spent all those years, living in a space of being miserable and hating myself and not understanding why. Because I just never lived in a space where I understood. And it took a while it really took a while for me to understand that. There's a lot of patience. There's a lot of I call it the journey of self-understanding, right? So to me, it's going through layers of understanding ourselves. And it takes patience, practice, and unconditional, like truly moving into a space where you're unconditional. Like get away from having to have conditions for everything in your life.
Right. So taking these conditions away, what are you doing now professionally in your coaching practice? Well, not your coaching practice, your guidance practice. Because I'm fascinated by your whole body of work. Let the audience know what you're working on now.
I've created 2 programs, an individual program, the human recovery program. which will take people from a place of unaware to compassionately self-aware, from a place of self-hatred to unconditional self-love, to a place of personal freedom, safe within your own skin, really into a place of personal freedom and liberation. Like, you'll be able to live into whatever you're meant to live into for the rest of your life, because you won't be carrying that fear with you anymore. You release the fear, you heal through the trauma, you grow forward. The second part is I created a corporate program around that. The corporate program I actually created first because I really believe corporate needs it more, which helps corporation wholly, as a whole organization, move into alignment with their mission statement, credo, or vision statement. Because depending on how old the company is, it's either a credo. If it's from 1850 to, let's say, 1920, it's called a credo. If it's in the 1920s to 1990s, it's called the mission statement. And now, if it's 1990s to now, it's the vision statement. Because we've always got to change names to feel special.
Of course,
right? It's about making us unique and different. Words are dangerous and powerful all at the same time.
Right.
But what it does is it helps the whole organization to embody their true core values as an individual to align with the mission statement, credo, or vision statement, and everybody lives aligned. Your production goes through the roof. You outperform every number you can imagine, but you have to release egos. You have to become compassionately self-aware. You have to be living in a space of self-understanding.
Absolutely.
And it really shifts a whole organization, janitor to CEO, because so many people in the C-level think they're so important. I want to see them close $1 billion business deal with garbage piled up on the floor. Because if you don't think that the janitor is important, then you have no idea what human value is.
Absolutely.
So just leave that space. Because C-level, the problem I'm running into is the egos run deep. And I've had a couple organizations, Fortune 10, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies, those magnitude, those size, that wanted to do it, but came with caveats and excuses, and C-level doesn't need it. Why would we ever want to do that? And I'm like, well, that's your issue. Like, don't complain that there are snakes in the grass, that people are sabotaging others, that people aren't living into the credo if you're not willing to take a step off your pedestal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because the minute you're on a pedestal, you're looking down on everyone else. So if you're looking at human value as someone is lower than you already lost the game.
And also, we know a lot that money doesn't buy happiness. It's nice to have, but there are many C-suite people who have all the money they can ask for, and they're miserable human beings. They're unhappy in the other aspects of their lives. And those are the men and women I'm trying to reach, because if we can get that message out there that you don't need money to be happy, because there are many people proving it,
But here's the thing, right? One thing I've learned from my experience, and I've had direct conversations in my life with probably 15 to 20 billionaires directly, one-on-one. And I still have a bunch of my network, actually, direct connections. One thing I've learned is if the outside world has proved to them that they can be miserable and succeed, they have no interest in changing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because they have all the external stuff to make up for the internal. We don't value our inner peace and our inner self-love, and we don't value those things high enough in this world.
No, we don't. When we do, it's when we're on our deathbed. You hear about the 5 regrets of the dying. That's when they finally realize, and we got to get people to think before they're on their deathbed, because you can't take that stuff with you.
But you can't get somebody to want it if they don't know it exists.
No,
and
that's
what the whole world, the whole external world has told them that they are amazing exactly as they are.
Right.
And they've accomplished these great things, but they're miserable inside. One of two options: they either kill themselves because they don't think that there's a way for them to be happy in a world that them being miserable has shifted the world so greatly.
Right.
Or they just don't believe it, or they don't know it's possible.
Yep. Yeah, I know. And that's why that's why you and I are here, and others are here to bring up stuff. That's the blind spots where I mentioned with man number one. I mean, that's a lot of the C-suite people are man number one. So
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, or they get stuck in two, which is the victimhood, and they get real. There's a
Exactly.
lot of the majority of the population's there.
Are stuck in two. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, number two. You're entirely right. Well, then maybe our mission is to get people to realize they're not the victim. They can take control of who they, how they feel about themselves. We'll get there, Mike. Michael. It's going to take some time, man, because when we're trying to,
100%.
we're trying to shift an entire, ecosystem. Listen, I wanted the audience certainly has captured the essence of Michael Padurano. Now, usually, and I forgot to do this before I hit record, usually I promote my guests rather than have self-promote, and I forgot to ask you, but they're going to want to get in touch with you, the audience. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn or Instagram. And I'm the only Michael Padurano on the whole planet, so feel free to, as long as my name is spelled right, then you'll be able to find me.
All right. So find Michael on Instagram or LinkedIn and get in touch with him. It's definitely worth having him in your life. So, Michael, before we get going, I got two final questions for you. All right. You got the opportunity to sit down with young 7 to 10-year-old Michael to give him advice about life, whether or not he's going to listen to you, whether or not you want him to listen to you. What would you tell 7 to 10-year-old Michael advice about life?
That's when I was still getting abused every day. So it's going to be okay. That's it. Because I definitely at that time did not believe it. I started drinking at 9, doing hardcore drugs at 12. So that's like right at that precipice of when I went into that numbing space and started the escapism tactics.
Yep.
Just to tell myself that it's going to be okay would really be what I would do, because I didn't feel heard, seen, or valued by anyone in my life.
Wow.
Anyone.
Wow. Okay. It's going to be okay. So then, switching hats, you're now with young entrepreneur, young businessman, Michael, and you want to give him advice about business. What advice would you give him?
So what age are we going to? Because there's very big differences. I got sober at 27. So
when did you start going into business or want entrepreneurship?
18.
Let's 18 to 20-year-old Michael. What advice about business would you give him?
Trust yourself. Because I've had over 60 million stolen from me from bad business partners over the years.
Right.
60 million. So 60
million.
Jeez. Yeah, government contracts, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So trust yourself. That's the intuition piece you talked about earlier. All right. Well, Michael, that's great advice. I'm hoping that there are people out there, I know there are, who needed to hear your story because it's going to help them write the final, the chapters coming up in their life story. I want to thank you for coming into my life. I want to thank Ethan for introducing us. There's a reason why we're talking. I want to thank you for being the human being you are, because the stuff you're working on is going to help so many other people. And just want to thank you for being who you are.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be me. And I'm going through enormous life lessons right now. Mm-hmm. But I just have faith and I trust. And I feel safe in my own skin, whether I'm living in my car, whether I'm living in a house, whether I'm buying a new house. Like, I don't care. Mm-hmm. It's not about the external things in any way, shape, or form in my life right now. And the world might be falling down around me, but I'm still within me and I feel safe. I don't care.
That's beautiful.
That's the shift, because I used to freak out. I used to go nuts. I used to scream. I used to yell. I used to lose my shit. Like, I'd go outside and scream if I had to. Now it's just, I let it go. I'm okay. I have, what was I calling it? A self-accountable release of attachment.
Self-accountable release of attachment. I like that. Okay.
I feel like that's a state of my being currently.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's a place to aspire to, Michael. So thank you for sharing that, my friend. And thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Drew. I appreciate it.
Right. Take care of yourselves, everybody.
Bye,
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live?
I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.